All right, everybody, let's get started today. Today is Friday. That means that this is the weekend coming up. I hope you've got a good one planned and all of that kind of thing. In any case, we're going to get back to the Sean DeMars interview with Doug Wilson and Joe Rigney. And no introduction here. Let's just get to it.
Shot at the Abolitionist at the end, which I'm sure you got grief for as well. Where he said, these abolitionists, where were they for all these years? They just all of a sudden showing up wanting to abolish abortion. He kind of takes a shot at that, and it was a puzzling one, but it was like there's certain groups that I will not be associated with and want to put distance, and there's others that I want to treat as we're all in the family and so forth. So Eric Mason, even the Theonomist, was funny, is the Theonomist got they're misguided. They're well-intentioned but misguided. There was charity there towards the recons because they're dead.
Yeah. That's an interesting point he made there. I did not notice that, and I didn't think of that right away. But it's pretty true. It's pretty true. The Theonomist did get at least something, and there's got to be a reason for that because he doesn't like Theonomists either, obviously. And Joe Rigney seems to think it's because they're no longer with us. I mean, basically all of them have passed away. Rush Dooney, Gary North, DeMars is still around, of course, but and then Joel McDermott, who's not even really a Theonomist anymore. I don't know. I mean, it's a very interesting point that he made there about who gets charity and who gets, the hammer.
Critical race theory, and critical theory in general, but let's be specific here. One of the tenets of critical race theory is racism is ubiquitous. If you think it's not there, that's because you're blinded and right. You are part of the problem. And what that does is it trains people to see racism where it's not.
Right.
Do you think it's possible, leading question alert, do you think it's possible that from so many years of sort of feeling like you've been pushed to the boundaries of evangelicalism, that you have a bit of a complex and can personalize things that are not personal?
I wonder if Sean was fed this question from somewhere, which is totally fine. There's nothing against Sean, but it does not seem like, in my opinion, I mean, I don't know Sean personally, obviously, but it does seem like a question that doesn't really come from him. It comes from somewhere else, and so he's basically saying, "Hey guys." I think I've already said that this is a hilarious question, and I think a legitimate question. And I told Sean that I thought this was really funny. But hey, guys, is it possible that this is all in your head? That you guys think that everybody is against you, but really you're just making it all up, or maybe they used to be, but they're not anymore, and that kind of thing, and. You gotta love a question like that. It's really good. And so what's funny is Doug obviously was not expecting this question, and he kind of like pauses for a good 5 seconds. We'll see. I'll time it. And he answers after a good long pause. But here's the thing. I mean, I've seen this in action myself, and obviously it's impossible to know if everybody is kind of being influenced by this embargo and all that kind of thing. It's not possible to know that, of course, but you see it enough times and you understand what's going on, and you hear it, word for word enough times, what's going on. So it's a completely legitimate question, and it's a funny question. But it's really beyond dispute at this point. It's not something that is really to be taken seriously. So, and I mean, I've seen it myself with my own experiences. I've heard about it numerous times, and so it's very clear that this is not something that they're making up. It's very obvious and clear, and there's really no questioning it. And so anyway, funny question, and I can't get over how funny the question is. Look at him. 3 seconds. 4.
Yeah, I would say
5.
in the abstract,
5.
certainly.
Sure.
Yeah, if they shoot at you long enough, the next shot that you hear might not be aimed at you at all. Yeah,
But you may have good reason to believe that it was.
yeah. So Mark Twain once said, "A cat that sits on a hot stove lid will never sit on a hot stove lid again, but neither will it sit on a cold one." So if someone fires up their attack machine and my left eye starts to twitch, I might be making a mistake, thinking that they're talking about me when they're not.
Yeah.
But they usually are.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah, they usually are. And what's really puzzling about this question is because Joe Rigney just got done explaining a few seconds ago about Ligon Duncan in particular and how he used Kevin DeYoung's article as his jumping off point to talk about the Moscow mood. And so, which makes sense because that's the article that coined the phrase, right? So, and that article was definitively about Doug Wilson. I mean, it wasn't about the mob. It was about Doug and the things that Doug has said and things like that. So, it's just I think that question it was hilarious and legitimate, but it's also a little bit puzzling because in this context, there is no mistaking it. There is no questioning it. So it's just sure. Theoretically, I could have a complex, right? But in this case, the shot was definitely coming my direction.
and have consistently been, but I think I'm pretty placid and easygoing when it comes to that. I sleep fine. I don't sit up nights worrying about it. So I would say a complex is not the word I would use. But if something blows up and someone asks me, "Who do you think he's talking about?"
Yeah.
I would probably say, well,
Yeah.
probably me.
And one way that it would you could disprove it if there were people who were willing to accept the invitation, it would sort of put part of your question is you guys say maybe I'll rephrase it.
Okay.
You guys think there's an embargo. Could it just be that it's in your head that you guys that you know what I mean? Is there really concerted efforts to make sure that Moscow stays quarantined?
Okay.
And
it's like,
and this is the other thing about this question that could be legitimate. It could be that people just don't like you, and there's no embargo. They just don't want to accept your invitations. It could be that people think that you're unbelievers, and they're too cowardly to say so directly, but they treat you like a tax collector. They want nothing to do with you. You're like a leper to them. It could be that as well. It doesn't require an embargo, but it just maybe people don't like you. So, like for me, like if I was invited on I can't even think of a person, but I'll give you an example. Like if Joel McDermott had a podcast, maybe he does. I don't know because I don't care. But if Joel McDermott invited me on his show, I would not accept. I wouldn't go on the show. I don't really like him that much. I don't know that I could control my temper, so I wouldn't do it. And I don't see any value in it, so I wouldn't do it. I would just say no. But there's no embargo. Like we don't talk about with our friends. Oh yeah, we got to isolate Joel McDermott. We don't discuss him. He's just a non-issue to us. He's a joke. When he does something or says something stupid, we laugh at it and we move on. So this doesn't require an embargo. But so yeah, in that kind of a situation, sure. But that's not the situation we have here. The situation we have here is people accept because they think Doug Wilson's just fine. They like him. Maybe they don't agree with him, but they respect him and value his contributions, and they want to set the record straight. They accept, and then they decline. And when they're asked why they're declining, when they renege on their acceptance, they explain what happened, and that's how we know about the embargo. So it's not as It's not like there's no evidence for it and you guys are just making this up. Like that happens so often that we understand what's happening. We know what's going on. We understand the pressure. I've seen it with my own eyes, the pressure. So anyway, let's continue.
Maybe it's just in our heads. I don't think I wouldn't say that, but an easy way to disprove it would be
to lift the embargo.
If somebody were to show up
yeah.
or accept an invitation to discuss anything.
Sure.
Then it would sort of be.
I did mention earlier. Not only do we have people scheduled to come here that have canceled, but I've been invited to various conferences and then been uninvited. That's happened numerous times. And when I'm invited, oftentimes I'll say, hey, thank you for the invitation. Why don't you look a few things up on the internet first?
Yeah, are you really sure?
Right.
Yeah.
Are you really sure?
But you also have to understand, it's not, I'll just say this on his behalf, he's not offended by it. Yeah. It's not like, so sometimes I think people hear that and they go, you're painting yourself as a victim, you're trying to get empathy. And it's like, that's the last thing, there's none of that.
Yeah. Icky empathy.
Icky empathy.
I guess the only reason I asked that is because in the moment, I didn't even for a second think that those comments were directed at you guys. It wasn't until the backlash on the internet that I went, oh, okay, I see how people got there. But in the moment, I thought, well, certainly he's talking about the way people have... The Moscow mood has sort of just become a label for people who are sarcastic, combative, so on and so forth.
Theological alt-right, sort of.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that later, but I guess we'll talk about it now. Let me ask you this. Do you believe in the woke right?
The woke right?
The woke right.
Like basically the equivalent of the woke left, but the dissident right guys.
Yeah,
is that what you mean?
Think about G.K. Beale, sort of, you become what you...
The woke right? The woke, do you believe in the woke? The woke right? You've never heard of it. Oh, man. Let's see if we can get into this. I'm not really sure. I don't have a whole lot of time.
You behold... you spend so much time interacting with the woke that you begin to mimic their tactics.
Well, I would say
I believe in the woke right, if that's the definition. So, I don't think the woke right actually exists either. But if the definition is you spend so much time interacting with the woke church that you kind of mimic their tactics, that's definitely something that's real. I think Owen Strachan is a good example of that. That's not that surprising because Owen was woke, a few minutes ago. And by the way, people, sometimes there's always new listeners and people hear me say that Owen Strachan used to be woke and they say that I'm slandering him, I'm lying and stuff like that. Just spend a few minutes looking it up. I mean, you can easily find woke articles from Owen Strachan. You can easily find stuff that he's said it's very just kind of standard, not woke right, like standard woke, like leftist woke, that kind of thing. It's very easy to find. So anyway, so yeah, there is a lot of woke right if that's the definition. I think people right now, their brains. And look, I'm not saying people are stupid, but we've all been trained and catechized over the years to accept a lot of these kind of woke premises about how there's a racist under every rock and all of this kind of thing. But I think a lot of the discourse regarding anti-Semitism in the right is the exact same tactics as the woke church stuff about racism. Everything is the same. I mean, there's a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of made up stuff. There's a lot of nonsense. And so I would argue that 90% of the time when you hear someone talking about anti-Semitism, it is the identical way that in the woke church days that you heard people talk about racism. It wasn't real. It was just something that they said. And it was based on assumptions and weird, statistics and all that kind of stuff. It's all the same. And so does that mean that there aren't people out there that hate Jews because they're Jews? No, it doesn't mean that. Just like, racism didn't mean that there weren't people out there that hated black people. Sure, there are some people like that, but 90% or more. I mean, I don't know the percentages. I'm not into that kind of thing. But 9 times out of 10, you hear someone talk about racism, it's fake. It's not real. It's not really racist. 9 times out of 10, if you hear someone getting called an anti-Semite, it's fake. It's not real. It doesn't exist. So yeah, if that's the definition of the woke right, there's tons of people like that right now that are very concerned about the rise of anti-Semitism and all of this stuff. And if you're not for Israel, like this is the point, like if you say Christ is king, you're an anti-Semite. Well, that's the woke right. That's woke right. You say Christ is king, you're an anti-Semite. That's an anti-Semitic slur. Woke right. That's the same tactics. You know what I mean? The same thing. If you're not for sending Israel money to fight off Palestine, then you're anti-Semitic. Like that's, again, it's the same tactics. It's the same tactics as the woke church, and now it's on the right as well. And look, this is a very complex issue. We'll talk about it probably more. We'll get to it.
I wouldn't say mimicking their tactics, although there is some of that.
Yeah.
I would say that, and this is something I'm actually quite concerned about on the right, is identity politics.
Yes.
Is very much a danger on the right.
Yes.
Okay.
We don't want to just do it better than them.
Right. Well,
which is what a lot of people on the right are doing.
These are people who have been taunted their entire adult lives for being white. Okay. And finally they say, okay, I can't do anything about it. I might as well be proud of it. So I might as well embrace it, and I'll take a page from your book, and there is
not your book.
A page from the woke left.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I'll take a page from Saul Alinsky. I'll take a page from those guys, and I'm going to be white and proud. I'm going to start hating Jews. I'm going to start, I'm going to start doing the thing, and that is a big concern of mine, and I regard it as almost entirely the creation of the left.
So he's mentioning anti-Semitism, and I don't think that what he said there would qualify for what I'm saying on the woke right, because he was a little bit more careful. I do think, though, that sometimes someone will say something about Jewish influence on our country, and when Doug says, "Oh, it's envy," it's this and that, that is a page out of the woke church, because he doesn't know that. I mean, there's lots of reasons why someone could be talking about Jewish influence on the United States that have nothing to do with anti-Semitism. And it's very analogous to someone bringing up murder rates in black communities, right? Because think of it this way, like in the woke church days, you got called a racist if you pointed out the obvious statistical fact that murder rates in black communities are very high, right? They're very high. And so, we need to, accept that reality and then figure out what to do about it, right? Accept the reality. So it makes no sense to deny reality, and then figure out what to do about it. That was, that's why, people would call someone like me a racist. I think that, though, that when people bring that kind of stuff up, you need a lot more than just that to call someone a racist, right? There's got to be something else there. And it's the same with the anti-Semitism stuff. If you say, hey, it's very interesting that all of these like horrible, morally horrendous policies and things like that, Jewish people support them at record numbers. And they lead all of these awful institutions, and it's just amazing. Like, it's just, you keep seeing it. The statistics are obvious. So what I mean by saying, well, that's just envy. When you say that kind of stuff, it's analogous to the woke church saying, well, that's just racist when you bring up the black murder rates. But you need a lot more than that to say stuff like that. You really do. So it makes no sense to deny the statistics. It makes no sense to not talk about the statistics. It makes no sense to pretend that everyone that does is some kind of an evil, hate monger or whatever. So that's the thing. So I think that that's a demonstration of, if you define woke right that way, which I don't think it makes any sense to, but whatever, that's an example of it. That's an example of it. And oftentimes the people bringing up the statistics, they go through great pains to say, I'm not saying that blacks are, more violent or whatever. Like I'm not saying there's a genetic thing that makes them more this way. Like they go through great pains to try to, not be racist. But of course it never works, right? It never works when you have the woke perspective on things. And I think that people do the same with the Jewish stuff. I mean, Torba gets, called the anti-Semite all day long, every single day. And then people think they got him. They're like, I'm going to zing him. What do you say to Jews that are believers? You don't like them too? You hate them too? And of course he's like, well, no, because, I don't hate Jews, number one. And number two, Jews that are believers are my brothers in the Lord. And it's like, Well, okay. I mean, he said what he needed to say. Is it possible that he harbors some secret hatred that he's not telling you about and lying about? Well, sure, it's possible. Just like it's possible for anyone to lie about anything. So it's anyway. That's a good example, I think, of woke wars too, and how it's kind of manifesting. Let's continue.
Oh yeah.
Right. They invented it.
But can you fill out the almost?
Almost entirely?
Yeah.
Oh, I think a bunch of it comes from Adam.
Okay. All right.
In other words, everybody's a sinner. And so basically, vain philosophies oftentimes grease the skids.
Yeah.
But we don't really need help coming up with
Here's
sin.
a way to know that if you're infected by the woke mind virus, because this is I think a lot of people on the right that have kind of adopted some of the woke tactics, I think they at least have their heads on straight enough to do a little self-evaluation. I think the people on the left that have the woke virus, I mean, they've long since abandoned any kind of ability to kind of evaluate themselves. But for those of you on the right that have that maybe qualify for this, here's one way to kind of test yourself. So if you can hear somebody talk about statistics that would potentially make the Jewish community look bad in some way, you know what I mean? It's just statistics. And if your first reaction is to call the person that's pointing the statistic, it doesn't matter if the statistics is true or not. It doesn't matter. That's not the point of this. What I'm saying is if your first reaction is to think, oh, wow, that's anti-Semitic, or to call him an anti-Semite, or to say something like that, just a slogan, right? A made-up slogan. You very well could be infected by this mind virus. Because here's the thing, and I'm not saying that I'm immune to this. I'm not. I told you about this. There was a tweet the other day about violence in black communities. And it was a long tweet, and I remember I started reading it, and then I closed it. And I said, I don't want to read anymore. I was like, oh, no. This friend of mine, he's racist now. That was my first thought. That's because I've been catechized over a long time to think that way, to not think and to just feel, oh my goodness, this guy's a racist, and make my decision to move on. And then I read the rest of the tweet, and it was not racist in the slightest. In fact, it was the kind of thing that people that really are racist really hate. And so none of us are immune to this. None of us are immune to this. You need to be honest with yourself, though. If you shut your brain off and you jump to, okay, that guy's an anti-Semite because he said this thing, statistics about Jewish, influence on the politics, and it looks negative, so that must be anti-Semitic. You've been catechized since the day you were born to react that way. That's a reaction. That's the kind of reaction that Doug Wilson, earlier in this article, says you shouldn't do. You shouldn't have that kind of reaction. It's very difficult. I'm not saying this is easy. It's very difficult because you've been catechized since the day you were born to react this way about racism, anti-Semitism, and it's all been programmed into you from every angle, in every way. And so that's the thing, guys. I'm going to stop there. We're going to get more into it in just a minute, but yeah, I think that's an interesting little section of the interview. In any case, I hope you found this video helpful. God bless.